Hi, my friends. This is Fooms Unfiltered, and this is your president, Fooms speaking. I am so happy to be here breaking bread and sharing thoughts with you, wherever in the world you are. Now, if you are here for a good time and a long time, please subscribe to this channel so that we can be best buds and ride or dies. And by die, I mean dying to self, because a lot of that happens around here. That being said, let's get right into our talk for today. One of the most popular concepts in mainstream Christianity, should I call it mainstream Christianity? Honestly, you guys, I'm so tired of all the labels. I had such a hard time in the last podcast episode trying to describe a subset of people. And I'm not trying to be known on the internet as that girl who doesn't have the most accurate descriptions for the group of people she's trying to talk about. Maybe the solution is that I should stop trying to talk about a group of people, but I can't, you guys, I can't. So, I'm going to generalize a bit and say Christians because I'm talking to Christians and I'm talking about Christians, right? I hope you, my fans, know that I don't mean every single Christian in the world, right? I'm making a very loose kind of generalization and I'm speaking about a specific type of Christian or a specific subset of Christians. And that will be that about that, okay? So, I want the freedom to talk about things even when I don't have the aptest labels. And I hope you guys will meet me halfway and bear with me, okay? Because one day I might say something pretty controversial and somebody will be tearing pants on the internet. Oh, what are you talking about when it is just a slight problem in description or a slight whatever it is, when it is like a matter of semantics? Somebody will not be tearing boxers and be tearing pants on the internet and say, oh, for me, you said this. Now, back to what I was saying. One of the most popular concepts in mainstream Christianity is the concept of a kingdom marriage. Now, I hear the people at the back, my backbenchers, I hear them asking me about what a kingdom marriage is. And you guys, let me put it like this, about 2-3 years ago, I would have sworn that I knew the definition of a kingdom marriage for sure. I would have sworn that I knew what it meant, right? But now, you guys, I just think it is like Kofifi, right? Nobody really knows what it means, but it is sensational and it gets the people going. But on a more serious note, you guys, now, I would define a kingdom marriage as ideally a marriage orchestrated by God to further his purpose on earth as it is in heaven and to expand his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Pretty simple, pretty easy, right? Now, going by the definition that I have just given, it follows that every good Christian who is striving for accuracy with the things of God, who is striving to be at the center of the will of God, who is trying to please God and live a life of obedience, should be in a kingdom marriage if they are of marriageable age, they're looking to get married, or they are married and they got married by God's standards and by God's will, right? So it follows that you're supposed to be in a kingdom marriage, because when I think of marriage, marriage is supposed to be that thing that kickstarts our obedience to God's instructions for us to be fruitful and to multiply and to fill up the earth with God's goodness through our seed, right? Marriage is supposed to be something that helps us on our journey with God. It's a place of refinement where we are even more refined to the glory of God. It's a place where things are set up for us to chase 10,000, whatever that means, right? When I think of marriage, ideally, two believers who are walking in obedience to Christ Jesus unto marriage are supposed to be in a kingdom marriage, right? A believer who is walking in obedience to Christ Jesus unto marriage, in the rare occasion of a Hosea and Gomer type of situation, is supposed to be in a kingdom marriage, right? It should be this simple and straightforward. However, you guys, kingdom marriage has turned into so many interesting things to the point where we no longer have a definition for kingdom marriage. What we do have is a rough template with a couple of very interesting elements that now have to be present for a marriage by Christians, between Christians, to be termed as a kingdom marriage. And while I will list these things out and counter them or talk about them, I want you to understand that I'm not saying that all of these elements have to be present in the mind or in the situation of an average Christian who thinks that they are being prepped for a special type of kingdom marriage, or who thinks that they are in a special type of kingdom marriage. I'm not saying that all these elements have to be present for them to consider it a kingdom marriage. What I am saying is, when you listen to the average Christian speak about kingdom marriage and what they think it is and what they think qualifies for a kingdom marriage, these are the elements you often see. You either see one of these elements, two, or all of these elements at the same place, at the same time, at the crime scene, So we're going to go over them one by one and just really talk about them and see, as usual, what God's standard is. And I'm really excited about that, you guys. So let's get right into it. Hi guys, this is Phones in Editing. I woke up not long ago, so pardon my voice. Anyway, when I say that there is no definition for what a kingdom marriage is to the average Christian, I'm not saying that the average Christian does not have a definition or their own definition of what a kingdom marriage is. I believe it varies from person to person, with each person having their own idea of what a kingdom marriage is. So while the definitions might not be the same from person to person, but the point I'm trying to make is that the definition is usually something pretty bogus put together, but carrying the elements that I'm going to speak about. While you might not necessarily find consistent definitions amongst a diverse group of Christians, what you will find is the presence of these elements that I'm going to speak about, either in totality or a couple of them singularly, if that's a word, right? If that's the description, you guys. I just woke up, okay? So yeah, you either find one or all of these elements, just like I have said. So that's what we're going to address and really talk about, the ingredients that make up a kingdom marriage by the standards of a Delulu Christian. I've decided that I do want to give this type of Christian I'm talking about a name after all. So yeah, Delulu Christian. I'm sorry. It just popped into my head and I just said it. So yeah, bye. So, one of the elements of a kingdom marriage that you usually find at the scene of the crime is a difficult season of waiting. You guys, this one is so bad because first things first, when you look at the trajectory of our lives, whether you're a Christian or not, whether you are in God or you are not, the truth is we are constantly waiting for something. We are constantly within that space of waiting. One of the consequences of only being able to exist within the present is that waiting is a necessary part of our existence. We are in time constantly waiting for the future until we run our course, until our time here is done. as far as we are alive, we are constantly waiting for the future. So I don't understand why waiting a while to get married for whatever reason has become a necessary characteristic of a kingdom marriage. I really don't. It's so bad that waiting has now become something that we want to glamorize when it is the most normal part of our existence. As a believer, all your life on earth is spent waiting for Jesus to either call you home or to return. All your life is spent waiting for the process of sanctification to be done so that you get your new life in its fullness, and you get your new body, and you get your new everything new. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I don't understand why waiting is something we want to glamorize and even be rewarded for. It's so crazy that even when we are waiting for something that is our fault, for example, you're a girl who doesn't go out, you don't socialize, you don't dress nice, you don't spend time investing in yourself, and the same goes for the men. You're a man who doesn't do any of this. You will now want to frame God up and say, the reason why I don't have boyfriend, the reason why I don't have girlfriend is because of you. I'm waiting on you. Are you really waiting on God? Or you're not putting yourself out there? You're not doing all the things you should do to be in a particular situation and to get particular results. And you're now framing God and saying, you're the reason why I'm not married yet. I'm waiting on you. What's up with that? Sometimes waiting is our fault. Sometimes God has not asked us to wait. Sometimes God is not delaying, or sometimes we are refusing to enrich our lives and build a solid personality. We are refusing to live authentic lives. We are refusing to do what it takes to live the life that we think we should be living. And we do the laziest thing and blame God for us not getting certain results. It's so crazy. It really is. And this is not to say that we should not live lives that honor God or strive to live lives that honor God by deferring to Him. The default way of life for every believer is that we live by the word of God. So God has to instruct us. God has to tell us everything about everything. God strengthens us. God is our source and He's our sustenance, right? So He's the one who charts our course. He's the one who orchestrates our lives. We give Him that honor, yes, but do not confuse your lack of direction, your laziness, or any self-inflicted wahala as waiting and say, oh, you're waiting on God. Do you have specific instructions to wait on God? What is God telling you about waiting? Because when God told Abraham to wait, He didn't ask him to wait in a vacuum. Abraham was doing all these cute little side quests here and there. He was rescuing people. He was building character. He was growing in patience. He was growing in... I'm not talking about the kind of waiting where there's a lot of character development, where you walk side by side with God and God is instructing you every step of the way like He did with Abraham. I'm speaking on a kind of waiting where you just wait within a vacuum. You're not doing anything and you're not going through any process of intentional, growth or refinement. And you just want to say, oh, I'm waiting on God. And that's bad behavior. Okay? And that's the bad behavior I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the waiting where you gaslight yourself into believing that every vision you see, every dream you dream, everything, every activity that goes on around you is some secret code from God, telling you about your kingdom marriage. That's madness. Let's call it what it is. Good talk. So there's a way to wait, and like I said, that's a different podcast for another day. I'm talking about a specific type of waiting that exists within a vacuum of inactivity, within a vacuum of no refinement, no growth, no intentionality. That's what I'm talking about. Waiting is something that many people feel like they should be rewarded for. Even when it is our fault and the waiting is not within the framework of total obedience to God. But that would be another podcast episode for another day, right? The point I just want to make is simply the idea that there are so many people who feel entitled to their definition of a kingdom marriage because they have experienced what they presume to be a delay in getting married and whatnot. And just like I said, one of the elements of a kingdom marriage to so many people is a dramatic waiting season to show and prove that yes, I am a special person that God found so worthy of a special marriage, so much that I had to wait and fight for. It's crazy. Now, this is not to say that this cannot be the case for some people. I mean, we have stories in the Bible of so many people who had to wait for special things because of the special tasks surrounding these special things, right? For example, Elizabeth and her man, Hannah, Abraham and Sarah, etc., etc. I get it. But when you look at the entire Bible, you will find that cases like this are rare. And most importantly, when you look at the entire Bible, particularly the genealogy of Jesus, you will find that every kind of person in this world has a place in the will of God for the furtherance of his purpose. We might not all live exciting or inspiring or remarkable lives by the standards of this world, but we all have a place in God's will. And as far as we live in obedience to God, we will fulfill our purpose. So it doesn't have to happen dramatically. I raise you, Anna the prophetess, right? She was confined to the temple for the most part of her life. And you will not hear stories or tales of exciting things about her story. But she fulfilled her purpose. I raise you, Enoch, my favorite guy. You will not hear anything about Enoch other than he walked with God, and that's about it. Yet, Enoch obtained a report that was so rare. Nobody could replicate it. And all we know is that this guy walked with God. That's it. So we're not all going to live Gegen lives. We're not all going to have purposes that are so niche and novel and so interesting and exciting and adventurous. But I'd like to assure you that every single person has room for them within the will of God. So to this end, I don't understand why it is a thing to glamorize waiting, as normal as it is. You wait every day to wake up, you wait for your birthday, you wait to eat. Because no matter how hungry you are, you can't just will food into your belly. You have to wait for the food to be available. If you are cooking it, you have to wait till you have, prepared the meal. If you're ordering, you have to go through all that process. So I don't understand why something as normal as waiting has been glamorized and, set unofficially. I don't understand why it has been set as an indicator for a kingdom marriage, one of the indicators for a kingdom marriage. I don't understand why. So to this end, I don't understand why we glamorize our waiting. I don't understand why we think we're entitled to special blessings from God because we have experienced what we will term as delay. And that's even so funny because how do you know you're being delayed? How do you know that what you're calling delay is just another day in your life. You're just living in a life that has been written, for you, of you. Who appointed you honorable timekeeper? How do you know that what you called a delay, or what you call a delay, is not you just being at the center of the will of God? And two, the second point is urgency. Now, a kingdom marriage is often touted as something that has some sense of urgency about it, right? When you hear the testimonies, there's usually speed, a rushing of things, some urgency. So it's like, oh, I met this guy, and in 6 months I was married. I met this guy. I told God I don't want to be single by the time I'm 33, and he did it so speedily, and all of that. There's usually some urgency, and it's almost as if people get so boastful about convincing God to work with their timetable, to work with their sense of urgency. And it just confuses me, you guys. It's so crazy. There's one video I saw on the internet recently. Now, if you don't know, when I'm not working or retreating, I identify as chronically online, you guys. I have no social life for the most part of the year. So what then is remaining that for me to be looking onto the author and finisher of my faith and pressing my phone on the side, So in this video I was talking about, a lady was giving a testimony on one of these popular early morning prayer ministry, right? They were having a service and whatnot. So she was giving her testimony. And the long and short of this testimony was that she had been believing God for marriage for quite a while. And on the instructions of the leader of that ministry, she wrote down her wedding date in faith. And when it was like around 1 week to the date, she met a man who she had no prior relationship with other than a client-vendor relationship. And I'm going strictly off what she said. From everything she said, she categorically said she met the man and they got married within a week. So, miraculously, within 1 week of meeting this man, without any friendship or any proposal, this guy went to see her people, his people went to see her people, and they did something small on her head, and boom, she got married on the day she wrote down in faith as her wedding day. You guys. And she was very happy about it. It was a testimony that broke the entire church. Leave internet for now. It broke the entire church, broke the comment section, where the video was posted. And she was like, no proposal, no ring. First of all, you want to propose to a child of God, and there's no rock on her finger. Even Jesus, when he wanted to propose to his bride, he gave us Peter as our engagement ring, and he said, on this rock will I build my church. Man of God, on which rock are you building your church? You want to marry somebody, there's no ring. Not even Temu ring. Not even AliExpress. Guys, if I tell you where the bar is in now, they'll say I'm wicked. So let me just leave it at that. But it's so crazy. She was so happy about it. She said, no proposal, no ring. And she got married within 1 week of meeting this guy, and they were not even friends. They were just talking. I'm like, how does one stumble into marriage in a week? And the emphasis of her testimony was, she wrote down a date in faith, and boom, she got married on that same date when all her back was against the wall and she did not think that was going to happen. And everyone was like, yes, Jehovah overdo, me next. I'm like, damn, that's crazy. You guys, I genuinely wanted to be as excited as the crowd and all the people in the comment section of that video. Let me tell you guys, I checked from the top to the bottom, from top to bottom, I I searched the entire comment section to see if I would see like minds. I'm like, what? Everybody, they were like, God of 11th hour testimony, 11th hour miracle, oh shaprapra Jehovah. I'm like, Jesus Christ is Lord. Not a single voice of reason in the entire comment section. Everybody was like, wow, this is so wonderful. This is so, hey. I'm like, by any means, a danger, oh, danger. I genuinely wanted to be excited, for this girl, because I mean, I love me a good miracle though. And if that miracle has drama and enough electric current to shock the entire world, I'm sat like mad. But while the wedding bells have had rung for this babe, the alarm bells just started ringing in my head. Bang, 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 bang. I was like, first things first, who is this man? Why was he just on standby looking to wife a lucky girly up? What is the backstory? Is it that God was speaking to him on, like, but there was no indication. She didn't even say that. And I get that it was because they were hurrying her to give her testimony and whatnot, but she did make it very clear that there was nothing other than she met this guy and he just wanted to settle down and she was down with it. I'm like, what's going on? Did my babe carry out any due diligence? Does she have loved ones? If yes, what are they saying, please? What if the guy is doing something questionable? We are out here behaving as if organ harvesters are not working amongst us. We are out here behaving as if human traffickers are not out here, working amongst us and breathing the same oxygen. We are out here behaving as if fraudsters and armed robbers are not in the building with us. Now, I love me a good arranged marriage, and I'm a firm believer in the truth that when you know, and it doesn't have to take that long if it shouldn't. I mean, marriage is just two people agreeing to work together for life. And the Bible even says it, as far or as long as these people continue to agree, they will continue to work. And deciding to agree should not take that long, right? But that fast. Young lady, who is your pastor? Did you guys even think of marriage counseling before he went to see your people and do something small on your head? Did you even think of marriage counseling? Or is that something you will do after you marry? How did you people decide? Like, was there an exchange of PDFs? You had your PDF on standby. I like the color yellow. These are my likes and my dislikes. How do people used to put the turn-ons and turn-offs? And the guy did same, and they just exchanged PDFs, and they had like 3 days to catch up and exchange notes. What was the process like? How's the conversation like? Guys, what's your pastor saying? What's your church saying? I mean, there's nothing Jesus cannot do, but wow. And all of this gist is just to buttress the point of urgency, because somehow a lot of people in the comment section and even in the church, while the testimony was being given, they found it very desirable that something so serious could be done so urgently as a proof that it was orchestrated by God and whatnot. And it was just crazy to me. And what I will say about all of this is not just for marriage or canon marriage or whatnot. I'm talking about everything in life. Look, meeting a deadline that you have set on God's behalf is no more important than starting things off on a strong, solid foundation, on God's terms and in full accordance with His will. God's priority with doing things for us, even when they are miracles, is not speed, but His glorification through your experience. God is not interested in meeting your deadlines if it is not in accordance with His will. You don't set deadlines for the God who controls time. Because the idea of setting a deadline and saying, oh, I want to accomplish this by this, and being so rigid in these things is the presumption that you have a say in anything. We don't even know what will happen tomorrow. We don't know what will happen in the next minute. Nothing is guaranteed. How are we, who are so limited in time, be prescribing time and deadlines for God? It makes no sense to me. So I'll take that again. Meeting a deadline that you have set on God's behalf is not more important than starting things off on a solid foundation, on God's terms and in full accordance with His will. God's priority with doing things for you, even when He's performing a miracle, is not speed, but His glorification through your experience. One thing I need us to understand is our idea of speed is usually defined by our flesh that is so obsessed with instant gratification and meeting deadlines that have been set by self and society. That's why sometimes when God is doing things according to His will, it looks like He's taking His sweet time to do certain things in and for us. There's that artificial sense of urgency that your flesh manufactures, and it is not of God. And God can never be glorified by these things. Let me give you the example of Lazarus, who was resurrected 3 days after he died, if I'm not mistaken. It took Jesus 3 days to get to him after hearing that he was sick. And even when Jesus got to his tomb, it took Jesus one crying sesh, one good cry, before he went to perform his miracle. I want you to understand that it looked like a lot of time wasting if we were to analyze these things by the standards of this world. But what looked like a lot of time wasting revealed the following things. 1, it revealed that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Jesus is God, and there's nothing that Jesus cannot do. Bending the laws of nature is light work for the one by whom and for whom and through whom all things were made. He created every law that holds up the universe. So, does such a person have to get to the scene before the person dies? It's not necessary. Wherever Lazarus was, in the land of the dead or the land of the living, Jesus was more than able to fetch him back and bring him to his body. And that experience, what looked like a lot of time wasting, revealed that. Secondly, that experience revealed the fact that Jesus feels with us. He's not just a spectator in our suffering. He actually understands us and he feels with us as he's working things out. Many of us just think that God is watching from the sidelines. He's just looking like Lucozade and Lucomon. He's waiting for us to react and cry and beg before he does anything for us. But Jesus is Emmanuel. He's God with us. He's lovingly watching us. He's lovingly existing within time with us. And he's feeling with us. And through the whole Lazarus experience, we could see that. Look, there are many, many things that we can see, many points of God's glorification in how the death and the resurrection of Lazarus played out. And that's another podcast for another day. But so many things were revealed that contributed or led up to God being glorified amongst men in that situation. And because of this, Jesus did not succumb to the urgency of the situation, not even for his friend, because something greater was at stake. The wonderful mysteries that, led up to the glorification of God in that moment were trapped in that moment. So Jesus did not succumb to that sense of urgency, like, come, your friend is sick. Da, da, da. So if Jesus would not do that for his friend, why do we think that we are entitled to that? To Jesus meeting our self-imposed deadlines that are usually born from a fear of missing out, from envy, from societal pressure and expectation. Why do we think it is Jesus's obligation to meet these deadlines? Again, I need you people to understand this Lazarus situation. This is the same Jesus who walked on water. This is the same Jesus who teleported Philip from one place to another. Why didn't he do the same to save his friend from death immediately? One would have thought, or one would think, that Jesus would have swooped in to save the day right on time before Lazarus died, but he did not, because he's not bound by our sense of urgency that is based on our limited perception of time and the future. This is the same Jesus that we still pray to. And this is not to say that there's nothing like the God of the 11th hour miracle. When you check your Bible, you find experiences where, Jesus just stepped in right on time to save the day. There are times that Jesus, does a miracle just at the nick of time, but he's not going to succumb to our sense of urgency. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So it's not something we should normalize, especially with something as vital, something as important and delicate as marriage. It's not something we should normalize, that when God is, giving us the miracle of marriage or giving us the blessing of marriage, there should be a sense of urgency around it. If there's genuine urgency, if there is genuine urgency and it collides with the establishment of the will of God, then congratulations. You have got yourself a bouncing baby miracle. To Jesus be your glory and what's not. But let's not normalize it. Let's not think of kingdom marriages as something where our sense of urgency has to be glorified, especially in ways where we do not apply common sense, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So, back to Sisimi. As beautiful as her excitement was, and as palpable as the excitement of the church was, I'm sorry, I could not get past all the red flying flags. I could not. Now, I know that my haters will call me a hater of beautiful things, and they will say, well, husband on her arm, no husband on yours, ring on her finger, no ring on yours. And you'll be absolutely correct on everything but the first allegation. I'd like to assure you that I'm not a hater of beautiful things. I can never be a hater of beautiful things, because that would mean I hate myself, and I don't. So yeah, I'm just going to need you all to think for a second. A little off tangent, but I want us to understand a few things. The point I'm trying to make, especially with regards to this urgency situation, is one, we can't be so obsessed with miracles that we do not think of the doer of the miracles and what his standards are, especially in the execution of his will and his purpose for us. When we are so obsessed with the ideas of miracles and, God doing these things within our time frame, we have an idolatry problem, whether or not we realize this. Secondly, if you are in a church or a fellowship or an assembly that encourages your obsession with the miraculous or the supernatural above your adherence to God's standards, please flee. Churches, I just think that churches must take care of their members, and in the special event that your member comes to cast themselves while they are giving a testimony, Jesus has done you a solid. Don't be hush-hush about the correction of such a member. because I was not too chuffed, when I saw that the babe was giving her testimony and all they were concerned about was time. Like, oh, let's wrap this thing up. We need to wrap it up real quick. That's all they were concerned about. People were excited over this very interesting situation, and you could not even establish what the truth was. And I stand to be corrected if that correction did happen and we did not get to see it. And that's why I believe in tackling things as it is hot. Nobody is going to have not everybody has the luxury of following your ministry or finding out that you did the correct thing, after the damage has been done. Not everybody has that time. So as it is hot, if somebody is misyanning, clear them immediately. Tackle the situation. Don't wait. Churches must take care of their members. Establish the proper way of doing things along with the proper doctrine in public so that others don't turn error into a precedent, so that others don't turn error into a doctrine. And the third thing I would like to say is God's standards for doing things will never bow down to our sense of urgency or our need to prove things in this world, even when we do these things in His name. God is not desperate to make a name for Himself with our lives. And God is so righteous. All publicity is no good publicity with God. All publicity is not unto the establishment of His will on earth or the expansion of His kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. So yeah, I'm not down with the idea of urgency being a very necessary ingredient of a kingdom marriage. Away from this story that I just shared to you guys, I've heard a couple of testimonies here and there, and if you are down with that thing, if you know what's going on in that kingdom marriage space, in the diaspora and in the home, you know what I'm talking about. It's usually this sense of hurriedness, like, oh my God, we met today, we got married in 6 months, we got married in 3 months, we got married in 2 days. Crazy. I do understand, to put some balance to this, I do understand that people who know what they want and have spent time waiting for something good, they don't necessarily like to waste time, And all good interactions, all good relationships, including marriage, can simply be sustained by agreement. I get that. An agreement doesn't have to take so long. I understand that. But you see that dramatic urgency? Nope. I'm not down with that. I'm sorry. Now, this topic is looking like it's going to be quite long. So I'm going to split this episode into 2 or as many parts as I need to so that I thoroughly address all the things I want to address. But I'm going to stop here for today because I don't want this podcast to be long, you guys. Editing is a nightmare. So I'm just going to stop here for today, you guys. Next week, we go again. Please tell your friends to tell their friends. Follow, like, how they used to say it, subscribe, like, share, comment. Your comments keep me going, you guys. I really enjoy your comments. Until next time, you guys, Calvary greetings and shalom.